Hey everybody, Nick Maxwell here. Today's one tank tip is going to be on pirouetting loops and pirouetting circles. Although these are pretty, one or two maneuvers and pretty generally simple when you think about it, as you start to master the Piro loop and the Piro circle, you can use this, to base a lot of maneuvers off of, and even build on these pirouetting maneuvers. So first here, we're just going to go ahead and demonstrate an upright. This is with right rudder. Left to right pirouetting loop. Start with the collective and a little bit of elevator and pull around. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and do a circle. The biggest thing here is to remember that your collective is also taking the shape of your circle. So we'll go ahead and do a circle here. Come around. Same as a pirouetting loop, just horizontal. You want to keep the angle of the model to keep the bank in the turn, and we'll come out. Okay, there's 4 basic orientations that will really help you learn pirouetting loops, and you can kind of break it down with these. The first one is just a forward loop, forward circle. The biggest thing with using these 4 orientations in this maneuver is you want to be able to comfortably control the model throughout the entire circle. This is important because while you're pirouetting, you can then make the corrections that you need during the circle as it hits those orientations. So you're not just stabbing and trying to hit, a correction. Go ahead and do, let's see what's next, a nose in circle and loop. The hard part about this is there is more drag to the helicopter going sideways, so you're going to have to use your collective a little bit more to fly through the maneuver. And on specifically windy days, it's going to look a little odd, but you're going to have to offset the model a little bit to get it like that. And this is basically kind of, I guess you want to call it an upright nose-in funnel. Same thing, use your collective, specifically in the windy days. You want to keep your elevator heading about the same. And I can't stress enough how much you want to be comfortable throughout the entire circle. You don't want to be just holding an input and guessing. The third orientation is backwards. Everybody's pretty familiar with backwards loops and backwards circles. Kind of funny, you never thought a backwards loop and a backwards circle would in turn teach you pirouetting loops. Let's see here, we're going to do a backwards circle. Once again, on the circle compared to the loop, the biggest thing is you want to keep your bank angle. That controls your altitude and your speed. Notice one thing too, the height is very important, specifically on the loops. If you want to exit and enter about the same, that'll keep speed and all your cyclic inputs more linear and the same, consistent from each part of the loop in the circle. The fourth part is tail end. Once again, you want to be comfortable in all the orientations. Can't stress that enough. And this is just basically a tail down upright funnel now. Just, I guess you want to say, almost in slow motion a little bit, but it gives you a good idea. And once again, keep that bank angle. Now, using those 4 orientations, here we're going to go ahead and just kind of build up. We're going to start our pirouette, and as we pass center, use collective, climb up, and start our arc. What you want to do is not just stir the stick, but actually drive the model into that circle. So now we're going to go ahead and do a half a loop, and we'll end up inverted. Come up. Notice the model's vertical at the first quarter of the loop, and we're going to pull out. One thing just to note, remember when you're inverted, negative collective is definitely your friend. You're always just going to go up, so you can always use that. Next, we're going to go ahead and come up into another loop here. Now we're going to start the back. Now this is where you want to be ahead of the model and where those orientations come in handy. See how that model pulled out real hard right there? When you get to the top and you get behind the model, you end up having to stir the stick faster and it gets all discombobulated and everything starts to look all sharp and rough. Here in the circle here, once again, see how I didn't hold the collective as we're coming through and the model dropped. The collective is your height and speed control in the circle. Since the model's banked, your cyclic is basically, once again, like the loop, you're driving it around. Come around here, apply your collective, and come around. Now remember, don't think of this as a stir. Think of it as you're actually flying the model through the circle and the loop, using those 4 basic orientations as it comes around. Here we're going to come around and do a furl circle here. Remember to use your collective. Today's a little bit windy, so you got the wind, you got to fight into it. It's your height and your speed. Okay. Entries and exits are a real big part of getting the loop nice and round, so that you're not fighting the cyclic the whole time. Here is a late entry. This is just a normal loop here, but you notice since we were late, we ended up having to use the collective to drive it around. These are obviously really exaggerated. Same as a circle here. Once again, like I've mentioned before, the biggest thing is to keep all the inputs fluid, because when the inputs start to get real radical, that's when the orientations are hard to find, etc. So that was a late exit there, or entry there. And here we're going to go to an early one. Early, you really tend to lose a lot of speed, and so you end up fighting with the collective, and the model tends to jerk around, and you do this real tight little loop. Which once again, that makes it hard to actually fly through the loop. You tend to rely on timing then, which is a little bit more difficult. This is going to be something where you're actually using too much collective and not enough cyclic. This is a pretty common mistake as well. You end up with kind of a diamond loop because you make these fast stabs to get the model to rotate instead of actually forming a round shape. Tail rotor setup's pretty important during pirouetting maneuvers. Here we're going to demonstrate, say if like a rod is flexing or the gyro gain's not high enough or your tail blades aren't big enough. As you're going up, we're feeding in rotor, and when we unloaded it pirouettes real fast. Some of the things that could be is low gyro gain, tail rotor rod flexing, too small tail blades. Those are all things, but that is pretty important. Here we're going to go, we've learned a pirouetting loop from left to right and a circle from right to left. Now I'm just going to kind of show you some variations just to give you an idea of how you can really build on, and create maneuvers just out of these two simple, basic shapes. So there was a pirouetting loop from left to right with right rudder. There's right to left with right rudder. Kind of reverse the rudder there, and you can do the same thing the other direction. So now we're going left to right with left rudder. And we'll skip a few here just to save some time because you get the idea. We'll do an inverted one now. Come around here, and now we're inverted with right rudder, right to left. It's endless. I mean, you can do the math yourself. Figure out how many different types of loops and circles you can do here. So it's pretty impressive. There's left rudder with left to right. I mean, you can, and even maneuvers for the master, the 3D masters, set maneuvers in the XFC, like the globes and these type of maneuvers. These are all based off of pirouetting circles and loops, just changing the orientations. Here's some circles, you can reverse it. This is where you can start to have some fun then too. During the loop or the circle, actually reverse from left to right, or right side up to inverted, clockwise to counterclockwise. You can build into those, and that's how you turn a pirouetting loop or a pirouetting circle into very complex and technical looking maneuvers. Okay, that was a one tank tip on pirouetting loops and circles. Hope that gets you on the right track to learning these maneuvers, and hope to see everybody out at the field.